Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Simon Sinek, and this is Aubrey King's video review of my book, Start With Why. While he was making this review, he decided it needed some awesome, so he put my awesome looking face at the beginning. Please enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aubrey King, and this is The Royal Review, where we dissect your favorite leadership literature. This week we have a book I was forcibly given by my teachers at school. This book is called Start With Why. At least that's what it would say if this camera wasn't filming in mirror. Now before we can dissect this book, you all need to generally know what it's about. Start With Why is a book that's, in short, about making effective decisions to cause your organization to continually grow, and that allows you to inspire others through these decisions to follow in your footsteps. According to Simon Sinek, the book's author, we do these things by constantly incorporating a core principle that he defines as your personal or your group's why. Sinek spends a large part of his book explaining what why is, but later goes into more detail talking about how to find your why, how to keep it, and why it's so effective. Let's go ahead and get started.
Alright ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. First up, let's talk about my awesome writing style.
We've read plenty of success literature from plenty of different authors in leadership class, each of these with their own distinctive style. Simon Sinek is very prone to injecting his own take and his own personality into the things he says. This is a large part of what makes his book so interesting. Sinek has a very unique style, it's very full of personality, and it's quite hard to relate to the styles of other authors. If I had to try to compare the writing in this book to another author's writing, I would say Sinek is closest to a more casual copy combined with the narrative-based passages similar to those found in Maxwell's writings. Now, one of the big things to look at when analyzing somebody's writing style is, do they get their ideas across effectively? Overall, Sinek honestly does a below average job getting his ideas across. He gets a little bit of slack because his ideas are very thought out, but also very complex. And it was because of this complexity, that I spent a lot of time during the earlier part of the book wondering what was going on, wondering what he was talking about, why this guy was rambling about whys and hows and whatnot. However, as Sinek continued to support his ideas with more and more stories and evidence, the picture began to come together and it all began to make much more sense. And I eventually ended up with a very good understanding of what he was saying. However, the fact that it took so long leads to a bit of negative connotation there. One thing you always want to look at when examining somebody's individual writing style is their ability to keep readers interested. Surprisingly, Simon Sinek does a very good job keeping me entertained throughout his book by relating the ideas expressed inside his book through real-world stories and companies. Storytelling doesn't always keep me interested through a book like this, but because Sinek is analyzing such big companies in such a fundamental way, it allows me, the reader, to participate in the analysis. For instance, when I read the chapter that started analyzing these companies this way, football season was still going on, and I saw a football commercial, I believe for an investment firm, that fit the perfect description of Simon Sinek's ideal ad. And because I was able to immediately take the knowledge I had learned while reading Simon Sinek's book and apply it to the day-to-day life, I continually became more and more interested to get more information and apply it to more different scenarios. And this was one of the ways that Simon Sinek really did keep me interested, so he did a very good job with that.
Now, let's make things even more awesome and talk about my awesome ideas that I awesomely tell through my awesome writing style.
Now, it doesn't matter how great someone's writing style is if they're not saying something that means something. Simon Sinek does say something, and in fact says many meaningful things in his book, and once you begin to pick up on the fact that why really means a core mission, the rest of the pieces fall into place quite nicely, and it all makes total sense. Simon's message dictates that in order to succeed, we need to continually focus on this core belief, this why, in everything we do. He says this will attract both customers and employees, or in the case of school, basically friends and acquaintances, who think like us, and from this attraction, success will be achieved. If you really think about the businesses we shop from, this makes total sense. As I read the book, I began to see this principle all around me. For example, people don't buy North Face jackets because they look a certain way or feel a certain way. There are plenty of lower priced jackets that feel just as good or better. People buy these jackets because when people see them wearing it, they immediately make a judgment, whether subconsciously or consciously, that person is outdoorsy or enjoys the outdoors, or maybe hikes a lot because they wear North Face jackets, a brand they associate with the outdoor. This is why people flock to companies like the North Face, like these big iconic companies, Apple to take as an example. They flock to these companies because when they're seen using these products, people associate them with that company. Even if even if I don't run Apple, even if I'm not the CEO like Ian will be someday. If I'm using an Apple iPhone, people say, oh, that person is an Apple user, he knows what they think, he thinks like them. And usually this is a subconscious thought process, but it does occur, and this is a big reason of why people invest in certain companies, and this is a big part of Simon Sinek's philosophy. It makes sense, it's very clear after a while, and altogether makes the book worth reading. Since we're looking at the validity and the applicability of Simon's ideas, it's a good idea to analyze how useful they would be to somebody in the group of people Simon wrote this book for. Then that would be people running businesses or starting businesses. And honestly, if I were to run a business, if I were to be in charge of a large group, I would definitely use Simon's ideas. They make sense, they're smart, and they don't take many real physical resources to begin working with them. It would only take a simple mental shift and maybe a good conversation with others in your company about what really is your group's why. Once that's established, just start going. You go from there. You make every decision with that why in mind, and if Simon's philosophy holds true, which I'm honestly very sure that it will, you continue to climb and continue to develop from there. Since we are discussing the applicability of Sinek's ideas to business, this is a good time to bring in my zinger, my extra piece of information. For my zinger, what I did was I took some local businesses and I analyzed them the same way Simon Sinek would businesses in his book. When Simon Sinek analyzes businesses, for instance, Colgate toothpaste, he analyzes their why, and then he'll analyze how it changes over time. Now, it's a bit harder to analyze the change over time in this case because I've only been around Greensboro for so long. A lot of these businesses have only been around Greensboro for so long as well, so we're going to do the best we can here. We'll start with the Green Bean, which if you guys don't know, it's a small coffee shop in downtown Greensboro. And what I think their why is, for my deduction, is to provide not really a place to get good coffee, it's more to provide a place for the exchange and development of new ideas. There's constantly a small band playing that almost nobody's heard of in order to spread their musical ideas. There's almost always bulletins on the bulletin board there for meetings for certain clubs and interest groups. And it's a very open atmosphere for the development and exchange of almost any kind of idea. Moving on, my next business I want to talk about is the Proximity Hotel, which is a large hotel near downtown Greensboro, not quite in downtown Greensboro. It is the greenest hotel in the world, and that is worth note. I think the why of this hotel in particular is to provide an environmentally friendly and luxurious place for visitors to rest and re-energize. This is one of the few businesses where we really can look at the change over time, because the Proximity Hotel is part of a much bigger collective called Quaintance Weaver Hotels, and Quaintance Weaver Hotels does both restaurants and hotels. Quaintance Weaver did the O. Henry Hotel, they did Lucky 32, they run Green Valley Grill, they run the Printworks Bistro outside of Proximity, and they run the Proximity. The O. Henry Hotel was built first, and that was much more geared toward a full-on luxurious experience, and it was not so much focused on that environmental factor. That developed in as Proximity began being constructed and was finally finished. We see that new why fully developed and fully realized in the construction of that new hotel. Finally, I want to look at Honda Jet. Honda Jet is a locally made and constructed jet, but it's actually part of the much bigger Honda company. We're not going to look at Honda's why because it's not very local. We're going to look specifically at Honda Jet's why. Honda Jets, their goal, their why is to provide a relatively affordable way for people to experience private air travel, because as a lot of us know, commercial air travel is very expensive, very full of hassles. If you could have your own private plane, live the dream, it'll be so much easier, no security, just get on your plane, fly away from the terminal, no long waits, no boarding times, all that. Honda Jet is trying to offer a more affordable way for upper middle class people to experience this idea of private air travel. These are just a few examples of Simon's ideas in practice and in application. There are many more examples out there. These are just three I wanted to highlight expressly.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for the lasting effects of my book and to hear Aubrey's verdict. ...
Since we're talking about the lasting effect of this book, one of the big questions we need to ask is, would you return to this book? Would I come back and would I reread this book? Since the ideas of the book are kind of hard to understand, the version I gave you guys earlier was very simplified, it's very likely that I would return to this book in order to sharpen my skills, so to speak, but perhaps not for enjoyment. Would I recommend this book to others? Yeah, I definitely recommend this book to anybody working in a leadership position. I feel the way it lends solidity to a vision is invaluable in application. I feel that anybody who reads this will immediately be able to apply it to everything they do, and it will be a huge help in that regard. Now, in terms of a verdict for Start With Why. Start With Why is a well-written book. It is full of equally confusing and rewarding concepts that any leader should take note of. As you begin to understand the idea of keeping the core mission at the center of everything you do, the words of Sinek begin to ring more and more true. I most definitely enjoyed this book and would recommend it to others. So, the final verdict, drum roll please, is... dramatic pause. It will be a 8.5 out of 10 as my final review score for Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I'm Aubrey King. This is the Royal Review. We will see you next week or next time I get assigned a book for a school project. Goodbye.